Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Guys, hello and welcome everybody for the first interview in, I do believe, two and a half years in person. We are right now here close to Frankfurt in Eschborn in a co-working space. I would like to welcome Fabiana. Hey Fabiana, how are you doing?
Hi Joe, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm doing well. I'm very pleased to be here in this interview and also after so long time having the pleasure of meeting you in person.
Yeah, totally my pleasure. We tried a few times and we had technical difficulties that didn't work out, but nonetheless, we are now today here to get you interviewed. Again, this interview is in our series with Invest in Hessen, our sponsor of today. Go down here in the show notes and have a look what they can offer you. I was checking your LinkedIn profile a little bit and you have a PhD in chemistry. I found this very interesting and I was wondering how you got to this place, why you did a PhD in chemistry. And the first thought I had in my life was, did you already like to blow things up as a kid?
Yes, that was where it started. I started mixing things together and seeing what was happening when I was a little kid. And so that's where my passion for chemistry started. And seeing what was coming out, what was the result was very interesting for me and fascinating. Then it evolved as during my studies. I decided to study chemistry, physical chemistry. Then in the end, and I did my PhD in chemistry, also working with polymers, working with different type of materials. This was very fascinating for me since my studies. And of course, I continued during my career because I spent all my career in polymers, starting at BASF, then LyondellBasell, and then with DuPont, and then with biopolymers since now about 7 years. And this resulted in the new venture, CO2BioClean.
We're already talking about the company, but let's take a step back because you talked about polymers. For everybody who doesn't have a PhD in chemistry, could you a little bit explain what this is? For me, disclaimer, I don't have a degree in chemistry, but for me, polymers would be plastics.
I would say yes, plastics are a type of polymer, but not only. There are a lot of polymers in everyday life. For example, in the food, there are a lot of polymers in the food. There are a lot of polymers in the creams. If you think about your day, you use a lot of polymers from the time when you wake up. You might use a cream or detergent, and this contains polymers. Then in the food, there are polymers. In the detergents for the house, there are polymers. In the computer, there are polymers because these are, of course, are plastics and so on. So we are surrounded by polymers, and they really are part of our life, of a modern life.
I see. And so you worked with polymers, you did your PhD in chemistry in Italy, and then you came to Germany for the Max Planck Institute. You did something that is called a postdoc. Can you explain us what this is and what you did there?
So actually in my postdoc at Max Planck in Mainz, I did work with, again, with polymers, with some special polymers that are used for optics that are a part of screens, of televisions and computers. And what I did there, I did some development for making, let's say, those polymers usable in real life applications. And that was already one of the projects that brought me to get closer to the industry, closer to the real applications, so making polymers usable in everyday life. That was really challenging and very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen then you also added an MBA on that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, I did my MBA later, let's say about 10 years, a bit less than 10 years after my PhD, because I was interested in understanding more about economics and how the economics actually works in detail, and being able to develop more also in that sense, being aware of the business case of the substances, the chemicals I was working with, and also being more into the administration and the topics that are necessary for running a business.
Mm-hmm. You talked already about a few businesses you worked for. What I found pretty fascinating, you've been working for the European Commission, right?
Yeah, I've been acting as advisor in the early years when the European Commission started to build these large programs as Horizon 2020. I was probably one of the few advisors, and I had to do a due diligence on the projects, and I found that very fascinating because you could see that there was a European community being built, a lot of innovators from different countries with different background, and that was really very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course you also stopped by, like you already said, BASF, which is a big chemical company not too far away from here, DuPont. You also had a stint in consulting at Capgemini?
Yes, I worked for something less than a year at Capgemini for consulting for chemicals. I would say then after the consulting, I got back to the industry where I belong to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. And you already talked about CO2BioClean. That's a startup we're going to talk about today. Can you tell us a little bit about what's the idea behind it and how you came up with the idea?
So the idea behind CO2BioClean is to use CO2, which is of course well known as a problem because it causes global warming. So using CO2 for making biopolymers. So we started working on CO2BioClean on biopolymers. So our problem was to solve as the sourcing for biopolymers. Started working with the co-founder Alessandro Caffagnini on several processes for producing these biopolymers. And we found that CO2 is actually a very clean and lean way of sourcing biopolymers, as PHA biopolymers in particular, and worked more on the technology. And of course, this developed basically the idea. This was the core idea of CO2BioClean. We saw that actually this technology is very promising, that it works, and the products have very interesting applications. They are very versatile. They can be used for several types of scopes. For example, they can be used as plastics, they can be used as ingredients. So they have really a wide range of applications. And so this is how this was We started looking at biopolymers and their applications and technologies that enable the production of these biopolymers in a sustainable way and also in an efficient way.
So if you talk about biopolymers here, for somebody who's not from the industry, that would be something that feels and looks and in some cases can be used like plastic, but in the end, it's not totally made out of crude oil, or parts of it are not made out of crude oil. They're made out of CO2, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. CO2, let's say it's the main carbon source. Of course, it's not only CO2, because you need a sort of set of reagents, but I think it's not what we are going to talk today about. The biopolymers that we produce are not sourced from oil, so this was actually very important starting point for us, because I personally believe there is need for sustainable materials that are sourced in a way that doesn't impact negatively the environment. And CO2 is a way of sourcing. Of course, some CO2 can be still petrochemical, because if it's coming from a petrochemical process, was originally oil, but there is no more, let's say, fresh oil or fresh material that needs to be used for this production. It's basically we use the CO2 when it's a waste, when it's an emission that otherwise would cause global warming in the environment. So in this sense, the sourcing concept is very sustainable. And the biopolymers, PHA is a sort of natural biopolymer, which means also doesn't have any issues with safety, and if it's used in plastics or in other applications, doesn't cause any harm to the environment and to the people, so which is also very important.
Do I understand it right? So basically, just for me as non-chemist, I think there's a long tube. At one point, industrial complex filters out CO2, puts it in the tube, and on the other side, at the end of your process, there comes something out that is granular, and it looks like plastic, and you can use it in a lot of different applications. Would that be the right approach to think about it?
Yeah, I think that's quite a good approach. Yes, you can imagine I like making the example when you're cooking. You put the ingredients in, and then you get the polymers out. So that's a good way of probably describing it. Practically, the gas comes into a reactor, which is a sort of pot, and then we get out some solid that can be used as plastics. So the idea is to use these polymers instead of the ordinary plastics that we see every day, so to replace them, in other words.
So I do understand your process is already patented. And can you talk a little bit about the scalability? So basically, how much CO2 can you put right now in, and how much usable, you called it biopolymer, comes out at the other end?
Sure. First, you're correct. Our process is patented. We have several applications that are now going in the examining phase very soon. We got positive reports, so we are very confident on this side. And going into the scalability, of course, we are doing a lot of work on the scalability. That's where our efforts are mostly focused at the moment. And basically, with the conversion, we obtain about half of weight of polymer with respect to the CO2 that we put in. So if we put in 1 kilo of CO2, we obtain approximately half a kilo of polymer, just roughly.
Currently, when I think about it, I don't think there is like a large deficit of CO2, because I currently do believe you can get it pretty cheap, and there's a lot of people who want to get rid of it, so that shouldn't be a problem. What I've seen on your website is that you're currently working with getting those biopolymers into clothing, into sustainable clothing, right?
Yes, exactly. That's the main objective also of the European project under the EC Accelerator, CO2 Textile, that will start very soon, probably already next month. Yes, so this is the first product that we are going to upscale. And basically, with our polymers, we produce some textiles that can be used, for example, t-shirts or foulard, socks. So these are the trials that have been already made, but of course we want to have a broad spectrum of applications. This is the first end use, But it's not only the only one, because we want also to look at applications for packaging, where packaging is a big issue, because you use the packaging and then you waste it. So having a biodegradable packaging is also a big advantage. So the first application is textile, which is very important for us, and we believe it's very important also for the society, because when you wash your clothes, if it's synthetics, you release microfibers and microfabrics in the environment, in the wastewater. Whereas if you have a biodegradable fiber, you don't release anything that lasts more than half a year in the water, and this is of course a big difference in terms of pollution in the seas. And this is a very important point for us for making fibers, and a very important point for the sustainability of these materials. But of course, this is the first milestone, and we plan to start there and then broaden up our portfolio.
I understand. And you talked about biodegradability. That means you don't throw it somewhere and it lasts for a few 100 years, but it basically, you throw it like in the environment. You should not do that, just theoretically speaking. And how long would it take until it disappears?
Let's say it takes less than 1 year. So it disappears both in the soil and in composting environment, of course, but also in the water. That's mostly the focus, because sometimes you can't prevent accidental spill of plastic waste, and it always ends up in the water sooner or later. So this is really a big advantage of having biodegradable materials.
I see. And you already said there's no microfiber, no microplastic from this that goes into the ocean and survives more than half a year. So no plastic trash islands anymore. And of course, you already talked about scalability. I've seen you guys got funded. You received 6.6 million euros from the European Innovation Council Accelerator. Is that money you use to further the scalability of your process?
Yes, exactly. That's the point of this funding. This is basically for upscaling our process, and in particular for the application of textile. With this funding, we will demonstrate the technology at industrial scale, so a small demonstration plant in Industrial Park Höchst that enables to demonstrate all the relevant parameters of the process, and so then build a full-scale plant in the future.
When you talk about a small-scale plant, everybody who is not from this area, the Industrial Park Höchst is something like you drive by for 5 to 10 minutes. What size are we talking about here? Like a football field, like a normal size living room, or like a couch?
We are talking about an apartment, let's say, approximately a bit less than 200 square meters in total. So that's about the size that we will use, split into 3 containers, and this is let's say a small plant, and of course very small in comparison with the industrial site in Höchst.
Basically, the idea is there you try, and basically everything you learn then helps you to do it really on industrial scale, getting CO2 into biodegradable biopolymers, as you called it.
Yes, exactly. Everything that we try there and we develop there will then be implemented at full scale. So that's our goal. Of course, full scale we start from small and then we go to large. But the next installation should be already a full scale one.
Now we get into the interesting part for the investors here. You talk about you already have funding to build up a small plant, and everybody who would be interested in investing in you. How are you guys currently financed, and what would you be looking for in terms of an investor?
Innovation Council, I would say it's closed, and of course there is possibility for private investors to participate to this round and co-invest, which is also something that the European Commission is very happy to see. So to have a mixed participation of public and private capital. And this is also something that the European Commission will support during the journey of the European Innovation Council. Let's say this is the current round where we are very happy to partner also with investors. The investors will be in the group of the European Commission, so will be all under the same roof. Of course, this is the first financing round. After this financing round, there will be a second financing round, which is needed for building a large plant, so a full-scale plant. On this round hasn't started yet because we need to get the let's say the small plant up and running to plan thoroughly the next step. But most likely next year we will open the next round, and we are very keen of welcoming investors and working with them for making the full-scale plant successful.
Awesome. Today our interview is sponsored by Invest in Hessen, and I would be also interested in your perspective as an entrepreneur from abroad who came to Germany and started a company here, and what you would wish for in terms of from the regional government, from the state government. But first, the most important question, you're living here in and around Frankfurt for quite some time now. Is there good Italian food around?
Yes, of course, there are excellent Italian restaurants, so I can only say that that's really top. I don't miss Italian food in Frankfurt.
Great. And what was your experience to settle here, to set up the company here, and what would you wish for from the decision makers in the state?
So actually, I must say that especially from the group Hessen Trade Invested, we had very good support that we started talking to them really after the company was incorporated already 2 years back. And we had a lot of support in terms of network, because they provided very valuable contacts to us in terms of opportunities to present our company, as we were introduced to many occasions where we could present in front of investors or just be part of a larger community of startups. So this was really excellent. And we had strategic advice also on the next step. We had very valuable discussions on what is the next reasonable step, why we could do something a little bit different than we planned. That of course brings a lot of value to a startup. So I think this is a great value for us, and also has helped us a lot. And I must say that the environment in Frankfurt was very friendly and also very collaborative and easy for a startup. So I think also for a foreigner, everybody could live with our bad German and could help us and understand us. So we really recommend also other foreign startups to stay in Germany and in the Frankfurt environment.
Mm-hmm. And are there any wishes you would like to address now? Anything that could be better? Disclaimer, we don't get Italian summers here. They cannot make that happen.
Okay, then I go to my next wish. So I think that now that with Corona, we are more free to meet in person. So I think that so like the event today is is very valuable. So meeting up with people, discussing, having exchanges, and also continuing the activities that we have started. So being introduced to companies with whom we could potentially collaborate, and potential investor. Of course, there's a lot of value for us. So our wish is actually to keep moving in this direction, and keep having the support of Hessen Trade investors in this sense.
Bottom line, guys, do more events. That is a great closing point. Thank you very much, Fabiana. It was a pleasure. I think the right term would be mille grazie.
It was my pleasure. So thank you very much for inviting me, and great speaking to you.
Totally my pleasure. And let's check back, let's say in a few years, and maybe you could show us around in your small plant.
Absolutely.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.